Some time ago I asked you, what do you think would be the worst possible kind of fear that a person could have? It was rhetorical and I didn't expect an answer. I answered it for you in that talk. I said the worst kind of fear a person can have is the fear they don't know they have. It's so ingrained in their life, they're not even conscious of it at all. Absolute worst kind of fear a person can have. What's the worst kind of sickness a person can have? The worst possible sickness a person can have is a sickness they don't know they have. And you can't separate fear from sickness, spiritually speaking. Fear is spiritual sickness. In every last way it manifests itself. Now, I will tell you something that you don't hear, but that you must. The return to spiritual health is a hell of a road. And the reason it's a hell of a road is because the only way that you return to spiritual health is by seeing your spiritual sickness. One of the most destructive and corrupting forms of that sickness, which, by the way, just by the very topic, I don't know if you can see, gee, I don't hear about spiritual sickness and things are wrong with me and how hard things are, is that there is inside of us, without any awareness of it at all, what is literally a herd mentality. It is literally a herd mentality. You look out and you wonder why. Gee, one beast starts running. Why do the rest start running? One looks, why do all of a sudden all the others look? One wanders away. Everybody wonders why. And the reason is that in the animal kingdom, there is a necessary mutual dependency upon all others. In the animal kingdom, a necessary mutual dependency. It is woven, it is weaved into nature itself, and the creatures are an expression of that nature. So that one animal has a reaction, all of them feel and go through that reaction as a necessary relationship between the herd so that the species can survive. But you are not an animal. You're in an animal body. You share the consciousness that all animals do, which is intended, by the way, to be a gift, not the present imprisonment that it is for you. And unlike the animal, you are not supposed to have dependency on anyone or anything else in the herd. Humanity is a herd headed towards the end of a cliff. And not one of the creatures, save for a tiny few, know that anything like that's unfolding. Because it is an unconscious relationship that human beings have with each other, where, without knowing it, I'm so dependent on you. My identity is wrapped up in whether you look this way or that way, whether you do or don't do for me. I don't know that there is this dependency until the source of it wanders off, does something that's not part of the herd pattern relative to your relationship to that creature or that group. And the minute it happens, there's a disturbance. And when the disturbance takes place, then comes the attempt on the part of the creature disturbed to try and return control back to the situation so that that individual no longer feels threatened by something that has taken place or not taken place in the herd. You would never believe it. You see, that's why I started the deal. I say, what's the worst kind of sickness a person can have? To not know that I'm sick. Worst kind of fear, to not know the fear that I have. If you could see how easily moved you are by people that move against you in any way whatsoever, act in any shape or form in some way that isn't part of how you expect things to be, then you would start to see this tenuous relationship that exists in a consciousness that requires that everything stay the way you imagine it's supposed to be. That is life on earth, and that is death of the spirit. How can I be true to any human being if in one way or another, to any degree, my identity resides within what you do? How can I be a true human being? You can't, and you're not. Anyone does anything that you don't like, and then they begin to change their behavior, or your behavior changes, and everything's in an uproar, and then listen, yes or no. And then there is the attempt to put it all back together again so that you don't have to feel the way you're feeling. And I'm trying to tell you that it's not you that's feeling that way. In the talk today, when I get to it, I have a story. And you'll understand why I've set the stage with this little pre-talk. There is this web of unconscious energies that exists as, on one hand, a guiding and overseeing awareness or body to ensure that the body of animals, the body of mankind, operates within that scope. But you tell one person about their dependency on what other people think of them or what others are doing, and then you say you're never going to know Christ, you're never going to know freedom, never know the truth, as long as you live in that kind of dependency, where the smallest tug on the part of one person, you feel it as something that you have to go fix. What's the worst kind of captivity a human being can live in? Not knowing that I'm a captive. What's the most painful thing that a human being will ever go through? Dying to the nature that doesn't know it's a captive. That's the most painful thing a human being will go through. But before they can die to knowing they're a captive, they have to wake up to their captivity. That's why the work since the beginning of time has always laid out the very simple 3 steps. You don't go from death to life. You go from death to awakening to death to life. There's a big difference. You wake up, you die, then you're born. Not wake up and you're born. That is not how it works. There is a definitive stage that an individual has to go through, which is the last thing that they want to go through and the only thing that the Christ in them wants them to go through, which is the realization of where it is that they've become snared, caught. And no one can teach you that, by the way. That's why it's so difficult. No one can teach you that. You have to see it. You have to see how one day you're someplace and somebody that always did something doesn't do it anymore. Do you know that moment? Something that you depend upon, something that you count on, and then they don't do it. They don't look at you the same way. They don't handle you the same way. Nothing. And then all of a sudden, you feel pain. Why do you feel pain when people change? Why do you feel pain when people change? Because without the animal pattern, without the herd, the unconscious relationship between me and that person or that group, I don't know who I am. And then how do I put that identity back together that has been shaken by seeing its dependency? What happens inside of me? How does that take place? Yeah, I start thinking about it. I start justifying it. I start finding problems with people, with conditions. I find everything I need to resolve the disturbance that is caused by an unseen dependency that I have, that people be and do and say as I want them to be and do and say. Now that's dying to yourself. When you see that, and you'll have nothing to do with the dialogue inside of yourself. Not one thing. Instead, you'll be aware of that which is pulling on you and pushing you. Because you've understood by the grace of God that this dependency that I didn't see is the worst possible kind of dependency. It makes me the slave of everyone. Anyone that doesn't do what I want them to do upsets me. Don't you get upset? These ingrained relationships that you have with family and friends and people that you know, the smallest deviation from the usual pattern, and you're there feeling as if something has happened to you. I'll tell you what's happened to you by the grace of God. You've been shown the unseen dependency that is the worst kind of dependency a human being can have. And you should thank God for it, not try to change the world so that it fits what you believe people are supposed to do and be again in your life.